Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for clicking. That means a lot that you guys keep clicking. If you guys keep clicking, I'll keep making. And if everything goes to plan, this is my last video about 42. Obviously, I've done such extensive coverage on the season that is currently happening. That's kind of been my thing since I started my channel in the past July. So I've kind of covered 41 from the first cast leak to the very end with my season review. And I did the exact same thing for 42. And if for some reason you haven't been here and you're new, I've done at least, I would say, probably 50 to 100 videos on Survivor 42 from the pregame all the way until my last video a few days ago. And so it's definitely worth checking out. The top link in the description has a folder of every single video that I've made on 42. As always, like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff because it's free, it's easy, and it really helps the channel out. So I guess the best place to start with a review would be just the cast itself. And I think this cast is a huge step up from the last season. Now, obviously, you really can't judge this season with much different criteria than I did the last season in my season review because they're both filmed back to back. They're both filmed with the same format and they both have a lot of the same twists. So I'm going to be using the exact same criteria and hold this season to the same standard as I held last season to, just to be fair. And this cast is it's miles ahead of the 41 cast. It's more likable overall. We have heroes, clear villains, which we didn't really get last season. We only got one clear villain, and even then people seem to stand them as well. But we had some clear villains in Hai and Drea, people who you knew that the audience wasn't going to root for. On top of that, you have a few, GameBot super fan Jacob Derwin types in Zach and Daniel, but you also have some real people who aren't necessarily the biggest fans of the show, like for an example, a Jonathan or a Lindsay, people who wouldn't, sign up and say, oh, I'm a big nerd of the show, blah, blah, blah. You have some young, you have some old, so you have age diversity, which I think is one of, if not the most important modes of diversity. On top of that, you have at least a little bit more of a diversity of thought. Now, obviously the cast is going to be overwhelmingly left-wing and radically woke, but that's just reality TV casting nowadays. That's something that we have to accept. So there really isn't much of a diversity in thought, but it's at least better than last season where the entire previous cast was like, no. Whereas now, at least this season, we had someone who was pretty outspoken against it in Jonathan. Whereas in last season, you could argue, I'm sure there's someone who votes red on the previous season, but if they do, they're definitely not as vocal as Jonathan was. And this upcoming season seems to be even more diverse in thought and political association in 43. So that's good. I'd say the cast overall is not a weak point of this season. It's not like the craziest best newbie cast of all time. I'd say Cagayan's is better, China's is better. I'd probably also say that David vs. Goliath is better. You could argue that Philippines is better, but it's definitely there in like the top 10 newbie casts of all time for sure. I don't think that that's a crazy claim to make. Moving on, I think the next big thing is the boot order, which I think is another really strong spot of this season. I think the boot order is so important. For an example, in Cagayan, you get Spencer, you get Cass, you get Tony, all making the merge and making it far. That's very important. Imagine if Spencer goes out in like Jatia's spot where he was being, targeted at that tribal. Imagine it would be such a much worse season, and that's not really something that the producers can control. That's just getting lucky, and I guess maybe tribe formation. I think the biggest thing is that the characters who have depth to them, who have several layers, who are not just like, someone who's really flashy for reality TV or someone who's just like a big Survivor nerd. People who have layers to them need to stay in the game, right? Someone like, for example, a Bryce in Cagayan, he didn't have much depth, at least not that we saw. He was a fun character. He was a fun pre-merge boot. We really didn't need to see Bryce in the post-merge. For an example, someone like Tony, who's so multi-layered and complicated, he needs to be there in the post-merge. And with this season, we saw those people like Mike, like Jonathan, like Lindsay, like Omar, like Hai, like Drea, like Tori, all get to the post-merge. And then your people who kind of flamed out and who were fun while they lasted. For example, like a Zach, who was really fun while he lasted, but I did not need to see Zach in the post-merge. Whereas in the last season, we really had that issue where these multi-layered people like Brad, like Voce, like JD, all these people that we got so connected to because they were so cool, all go out really early. And then people like Tiffany, like Erica, these people who just aren't that interesting, like Heather, make it to the merge and take up those spots that are so very valuable in your post-merge The next big thing is gameplay, and I think this season was inconsistent on that front. Definitely better than last season. Last season really only had a few episodes here and there, whereas in this season, to me, had stretches here and there, right? We had a few episodes during the pre-merge. I think 3 through 5 were pretty strategically heavy, especially 3. 3 really made the whole pre-merge. Honestly, the pre-merge really didn't need to be strategically heavy. I would have liked it to be more, but it really didn't. Just based off that one tribal, we were able to get all of the strategy that we need. I think that was one of, if not the best tribals that's ever existed and that's ever happened. So I was fine with the pre-merge strategically, just based off the fact that that tribal was so good. Then we hit post-merge, and we have about 3 episodes or 4 votes where we really just don't really get much entertaining stuff. I mean, the biggest thing that happens is Drea plays her idol and Maryanne also plays her idol at the race tribal. I mean, honestly, besides that, there really isn't much exciting stuff that goes on with strategy, right? You get a very simple Lydia boot, which is not really that simple, but on paper it's pretty simple. It's a 5 to 2 to 2 to 2 to 1 to 1 or something like that vote. Pretty simple. And then on top of that, after that, you get a very telegraphed Chanel boot, and then on top of that, you get a pretty telegraphed Rockshroy blindside, and I'm using air quotes because it really wasn't a blindside. Like, it was so obvious based off of the edit, because of course Omar and Hai are not going to do an all males alliance because it's Omar and Hai. I mean, come on, bro, come on. And then after that, you get the Tori boot, which I guess was a little bit interesting, but it was still pretty obvious because Tori was at the bottom of the game. And so to me, you get 4 people at the bottom who are just actively not good players at the game going home. It makes sense strategically for the players, but for TV wise, it wasn't very fun to watch. Then the season kicks into gear immediately. I don't think the Hai boot is the most entertaining blindside, but what it is it's a turning point, right? All of the people on the bottom are no longer going home, because if they kept that strategy up, then Maryanne and Romeo would have gone next. No. Instead, now all of the threats are going out. So first it was Hai, then it was Drea, then it's Omar, and then it's Lindsay, and then at 4 it's Jonathan. Back to back. Great finish to the season strategically. I think the biggest thing is that it took so long at the merge for the strategy to kick into gear. I think that might have had something to do with the lack of food, especially early on in the pre-merge. Maybe I'm wrong, it's kind of a stretch, but I don't know, maybe that's it. I think the character moments did help that early pre-merge, all of those challenges and Jonathan versus Lindsay and blah blah blah. But I will say the strategy did take a little bit to kick in, and the pre-merge wasn't anything to call home about overall as a product strategically, although I will say that one tribal was absolutely fantastic. And then as far as the very last thing in the winner, I've talked about Maryanne's win extensively in several videos, but the main one in the top right corner is my main video, specifically after she won. The day after she won, I did a full video on her entire game and what I think of it, so go check it out in the top right corner. But what do you guys think of Survivor 42? Let me know that down below in the comments. As always, none of this happens without you guys. Without you guys, I'm sure we're guys spinning a weird microphone. So as always, thank you. And if that's it, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.